I could definitely say that, like, especially with YouTube, the information, well, I should say YouTube and, like, DAWs, making music feels extremely more accessible. Like, I don't need to go into a studio. I have every piece of technology I need through my laptop, and I can take all the lessons and understanding of how to actually use it by just researching it on YouTube. And you have people like Charlie Puth, for me, who I would see sort of early on about how they were creating stuff. There was this one Charlie Puth video where he broke down attention, and that was the first time, notably, I went thinking, oh, I might actually be able to do this, because you think there's a secret sauce to how it works, and when you can see it, it's just like, oh, it's actually within my grasp.
Especially for electronic music, you know, me and I think, you know, I had a project with Skrillex called Jack U, and I think that project was so bizarre and awesome because we just used all of our history that we had in different styles. We just put it together and we made sense of it together. And I want Skrillex, you know, he's like 8 years younger than me, but he's such a better producer than me. Like, he's like connected to the mainframe. Like, he's like the best laptop creator I've ever been with. Yeah. I remember watching him and then like being like, how did these kids do this? And I slowly see his rise was like in an emo band, then just watching tutorials of a band called Nero. Slowly he just learned the trade by basically being an intern for a bunch of different producers. And I saw like younger kids getting younger and younger. Like, then you had someone like Martin Garrix, who started his first single at like 16, and then now you have kids that are like 13 putting out electronic records, and they really only need a YouTube tutorial to tell them how to make the sounds, and then they can go crazy with it because they have all the time in the world.
I will say though, there is still that period of learning where you have to figure out
structure.
Well, the secret sauce is really like just good construction.
Yeah. I think it's easy to copy a sound and have an exciting sound off the back, but it's hard to have a career and have a brand, because that does take time. That takes a lot of time, because you even you're young as hell, but I feel like I've been listening to you and like knowing about you for like 5 years now. So that's plenty of time to develop a brand. That's plenty of time to develop like, that's who I am, that's my identity. But a younger person, they might just like something, they choose that identity immediately, but they don't actually be that identity. They kind of can, like, they put clothes, but it's not who they are underneath the clothes.
Well, you also have to consider like the school aspect of it. I thought a lot about this. I think people my age feel sort of a pressure to fit in, whereas I got removed from school just because I was working a bunch at a fairly young age. So during these years where I'm sort of being a teen, I've been isolated enough to not feel any external pressure to be this or that. So I felt it very easy to be myself. Whereas at school, I was like someone who got bullied and whatnot, and I don't know that I would be the same person if I was still in there.
100%. I mean, that gives you freedom. It might make you, it's a lot harder of a journey, you know, but I had the same situation. I went to 4 different high schools. My parents moved from Fort Lauderdale to Nashville and then to Daytona Beach. And like, I had to start, who starts their senior year in a new high school, you know? It's very crazy. So I had to start there. I started like doing music only. I had a couple friends there, and I hung out with the kids that were older than me. And I just didn't really have like a social structure in school. Luckily, I didn't need it. Like, some people need it. And I see my kids now who are doing Zoom. I'm like, man, I wish they were in real schools, because they need that social energy, the social interaction. But for me, I didn't need much. And I started really diving into music, and it gave me that. It opens you to like developing a lot. And I think that's something a lot of kids don't even get a chance to, because they're chasing so much to be part of a social structure and being with their friends. And you can also be a social person and be a great musician. I just think that I needed to be away from that to develop.
I completely understand where you're coming from. Well, here's an interesting question. Do you find your environment sort of the substitute for that socialization? Because I don't necessarily need to be hanging out with a bunch of people every day. I do all right on my own just because I have music, and so I have enough hobbies to keep me busy. But I do find a very strong desire to be in like cities and like somewhere like New York where there's constant motion. Are you the same type of person?
I did that. I'm older now, man. I've done that because I moved from Florida to Orlando, and that was the big city for me. So I went to Philly because I couldn't afford to go to New York. And I went to school there, and I stayed there for 10 years. And I was part of that, like the Matrix in Philadelphia. And it's a hard town, but rent was cheap, so art was happening everywhere. And I did that move to LA because that became the hub where if you want to make it in music, you have to move to LA. And now I'm like, I started being more on the road, and I was like, you know what, I'm doing all this music on my own. I don't even need to write with people anymore. And that's kind of like, I'm on like my more advanced version of myself here in like the country.
Yeah.
And just like John Mayer, the same way, I think he gave me a good example of like moving to Wyoming, or he moved to
Montana in his
Wyoming,
case.
just being able to just come to LA when he needs to for a little while and recharge socially, but then go back to work and develop something for himself. And that's what I've been doing here and doing in Jamaica.
I see.
And people come here now. People come to my studio here in Malibu and they work. There's always energy here.
That's great.
You know, always people working, always people coming here to create. You know, the last thing you want to do is build a giant mansion and live in it by yourself and play guitar.